An-Nisa, the women, is chapter 4 in the Qur'an. This Madinian chapter came to emphasize the importance of justice, particularly when it comes to the treatment of women, whether it's at home, in our community, or on a societal level. The chapter came to establish and protect the rights of women. It also came to protect other vulnerable groups, such as orphans and bondswomen. This message of justice and mercy isn't just for Muslims, but for all human beings. In fact, the chapter begins by addressing all of humanity. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. O humanity, be mindful of your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and from it he created its mate, and through both he spread countless men and women, reminding us that Adam and Eve came from the same soul, and that we all descended from them both. The verse continues by saying, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَيْكُمْ رَقِيبًا. And be mindful of Allah, in whose name you appeal to one another, and honor family ties. Surely God is ever watchful over you. Highlighting the importance of taqwa, which means being mindful of Allah, and knowing that He can see everything we say and do. Having this constant awareness of Allah helps keeps us in check. This chapter is a blueprint on how to treat women and others who are vulnerable, fairly and kindly. So let's look at it in more detail. Remember, this was revealed at a time when many of the common practices and norms, not only within Arabian society, but even in Europe and other parts of the world, were detrimental and abusive to women. For example, men were used to marrying many women and would often replace their spouses with other women whenever they desired. The chapter came not only to put a limit on polygamy, but placed other conditions that made it almost impossible to rightfully marry more than one woman. So even though the chapter indicates that men can marry not only one, but 2, 3, or a maximum of 4 women, they must be able to treat them all equitably and fairly. And since this is almost impossible to do, the chapter makes it clear to only marry one woman. Also, a man is required to pay a dowry to his bride, and it has to be given to her, not her father. And it has to be given to her graciously as a gift, out of his own kindness and love for her. It also becomes her property, so he cannot take it back from her later, even after he divorces her, which was common practice back then. The chapter also came to protect a woman's right to inheritance, which is something they didn't have before. Protecting and preserving the inheritance of orphans was now required as well. It was common practice that when someone died and left behind children, other family members, usually men, would claim the children's inheritance. It was also common that when an orphan girl would grow up and get married, she would not get any dowry from the man she was marrying. The chapter came to end all such practices that took advantage of women and orphans. Women would now have financial protection and independence, and men can no longer claim their inheritance, dowry, or any of their personal property. Allah would also legislate how inheritance should be divided among all family members of the deceased, listing all the different scenarios and the proper distribution. And although there are certain scenarios where a male can inherit twice as much as a female, there are many other scenarios where a female can either inherit the same amount as a male, more than a male, or can inherit while another male relative cannot. The chapter then goes on to discuss what is considered to be a lawful and appropriate relationship between a man and a woman, with marriage being the foundation of any acceptable relationship, forbidding adultery as it is harmful to any society and was another way that men took advantage of women. This places a tremendous value on the sanctity of marriage and how it's a legal contract that would protect women. The chapter also mentions who a man can lawfully marry and who he cannot. For example, a son used to inherit his father's wives, who were not his biological mother, after he died. This now became prohibited in Islam, along with other women a man cannot marry. The chapter also establishes the role of a husband as the provider and protector of his wife, certainly not in a controlling or abusive manner, instead as someone who is responsible for taking care of his wife and prioritizing her needs, removing any burden on the wife to contribute financially to the household, maintaining her financial independence from her husband. And if a husband were to divorce his wife, there are certain obligations placed on him to preserve her dignity and financial well-being after marriage. All these rules for marriage, divorce, inheritance, and taking care of orphans are in place to help maintain a fair and equitable balance in society, with justice and mercy being at the core of every interaction. Allah would call on us to stand up for justice. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلوا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. O believers, stand firm for justice as witnesses for God, even if it is against yourselves, your parents, or close relatives, be they rich or poor. God is best to ensure their interest, so do not let your desires cause you to deviate from justice. If you distort the testimony or refuse to give it, then know that God is certainly all aware of what you do. The chapter would then go on to warn us against hypocrites who are not aligned with Allah and His laws, and try to distort the truth and deceive others. Allah warns that the punishment awaits them on the Day of Judgment. Towards the end of the chapter, Allah reiterates that we must believe in all the prophets that have come before us, and not pick and choose which prophets we accept and which we reject. He also addresses Jews and Christians who have done so in the past by rejecting prior prophets and claiming falsehoods about Mary and Jesus, peace be upon them. يا أهل الكتاب لا تغلوا في دينكم ولا تقولوا على الله إلا الحق إنما المسيح عيسى بن مريم رسول الله وكلمته ألقاها إلى مريم وروح منه فآمنوا بالله ورسله ولا تقولوا ثلاثة انتهوا خيرا لكم إنما الله إله واحد سبحانه أن يكون له ولد له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وكفى بالله وكيلا. O people of the book, do not go to extremes regarding your faith. Say nothing about God except the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was no more than a messenger of God, and the fulfillment of His word through Mary, and a spirit created by a command from Him. So believe in God and His messengers, and do not say Trinity. Stop, for your own good. God is only one God. Glory be to Him. He is far above having a son. To Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. And God is sufficient as a trustee of affairs. Allah is warning the Jews against denying Jesus as the Messiah, and warning the Christians against calling Jesus God. Help us create more videos by visiting our website today and contributing to our mission and project. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to access more videos and content.